Let us journey back in time, not just a few hundred years, but 12,000. We arrive in a world that is just emerging from a long, deep freeze. This is the dawn of a new age for our planet, and for our own species, Homo sapiens. The great ice sheets that once covered so much of the Earth are in retreat. As they melt, they reveal new lands, new rivers, and new opportunities. This was a time of immense change, a pivotal moment in the story of humanity. The world was being reshaped, and with it, the lives of the people who called it home. They were about to embark on one of the greatest adventures in our history. Imagine standing on a hillside in this ancient world. The air is crisp and clean, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. Below you, a vast plain stretches to the horizon, dotted with herds of deer and wild horses. This is a world teeming with life, but also a world of great challenges. The people who lived here were hunters and gatherers. Their survival depended entirely on their deep understanding of the natural world. They knew the seasons, the movements of animals, and the places where healing herbs grew. Their existence was a delicate dance with nature, one that required immense skill, courage, and cooperation. This period, known as the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age, was a bridge between two worlds. It was the time after the great Ice Age hunters, but before the first farmers. The changes that took place then set the stage for everything that was to come. It was during these few thousand years that our ancestors laid the foundations for modern society. They developed new tools, created remarkable art, and began to experiment with new ways of living. It was a time of incredible innovation, driven by the need to adapt to a rapidly changing environment. The story of these people is our story. So come with me, back to 10,000 BCE. Let us explore this lost world together. We will walk through ancient forests, paddle along newly formed coastlines, and sit by the fires of our distant relatives. We will discover how they lived, what they believed, and how they survived in a world so different from our own. By understanding their journey, we can better understand ourselves. For in their struggles and their triumphs, we can see the very beginnings of the world we know today. It is a journey into the heart of what it means to be human. For tens of thousands of years, a great cold had gripped the planet. This was the last ice age. Immense glaciers, some miles thick, covered much of North America, Europe, and Asia. The world was a colder, drier place. So much of the world's water was locked up in ice that sea levels were dramatically lower than they are today. Vast plains existed where we now see seas and oceans. Herds of giant beasts, the megafauna, roamed these landscapes. Woolly mammoths, giant deer, and cave lions were the masters of this frozen kingdom. Humanity existed on the fringes, surviving in small, hardy bands. Then, around 12,000 years ago, the world began to warm. The Great Thaw had begun. This was not a slow, gentle process. It was a time of dramatic and sometimes violent change. As the glaciers melted, they released unimaginable quantities of water. This water carved new river valleys and filled enormous basins, creating the lakes we know today. The melting ice caused sea levels to rise, sometimes rapidly. Coastlines that had been stable for generations were suddenly flooded. Entire landscapes disappeared beneath the waves, forcing people and animals to move to higher ground. The world was being reborn in water and warmth. The animals of the Ice Age struggled to adapt. The cold grasslands they depended on were replaced by dense forests. The woolly mammoth, the woolly rhinoceros, and the giant Irish elk could not survive in this new world. Their numbers dwindled, and one by one they vanished forever. Their extinction was a profound event. For millennia, human hunters had relied on these great beasts for food, clothing, and tools. Now, our ancestors had to find new sources of sustenance. The disappearance of the megafauna forced a fundamental shift in their way of life, pushing them towards new strategies and new territories. This new, warmer climate created a world of abundance. As the ice retreated, it left behind fertile soil. Forests of birch, pine, and oak spread across the land. These forests were home to a new caste of animals: red deer, roe deer, wild boar, and aurochs, the ancestor of modern cattle. The rivers and newly formed coastlines teemed with fish, seals, and seabirds. For the people of the Mesolithic, this was a land of opportunity. The challenges were great, but the rewards were greater. They were standing at the threshold of a greener, wetter, and richer world. Imagine a vast, low-lying plain connecting Great Britain to mainland Europe. This was not a myth or a legend, it was a real place. Today we call this submerged landscape Doggerland. During the Mesolithic period, after the ice had retreated but before the sea had risen to its present level, this was a heartland for human settlement. It was a rich and fertile plain, crisscrossed by rivers and filled with marshes, lagoons, and gentle hills. For the people who lived there, it was not a bridge between lands. It was their home, a paradise for hunters and gatherers. The inhabitants of Doggerland lived in a world of plenty. The rivers provided a constant supply of fish like salmon and eel. The wetlands were home to countless birds, offering a ready source of eggs and meat. In the woodlands and open plains, they hunted deer, wild boar, and the powerful aurochs. They would have moved with the seasons, following the herds and gathering plants, nuts, and berries as they became available. Their lives were intimately connected to the rhythms of this lost land. We find evidence of their existence dredged from the seafloor: flint tools, animal bones, and even human remains, ghosts of a drowned world. However, the world of the Doggerlanders was living on borrowed time. The same warming trend that made their land so rich was also destined to destroy it. As the last of the great ice sheets in Scandinavia and North America melted, the sea level continued its relentless rise. What began as a slow encroachment of the sea became a series of dramatic floods. A freshwater lake in the heart of Doggerland would have eventually been breached by the salt water of the rising North Sea. The land began to shrink. Hills became islands. The people were forced to retreat, generation after generation, from the encroaching water. The end may have come suddenly. Scientists believe that around 8,200 years ago, a massive underwater landslide off the coast of Norway, known as the Storegga slide, triggered a catastrophic tsunami. This immense wave would have washed over what was left of Doggerland, wiping out coastal communities and turning the last low-lying plains into a seabed. The final connection between Britain and the continent was severed. The story of Doggerland is a powerful reminder of how dramatically our planet can change, and how resilient our ancestors had to be in the face of overwhelming forces of nature. As the great Scandinavian ice sheet, which had covered the region for millennia, began to melt, it unveiled a new frontier. This was a stark, barren landscape, freshly scraped clean by the ice. But life is tenacious. First came the hardy lichens and mosses, then grasses, and finally pioneering trees like birch. Following the plants came the animals. Reindeer were among the first large herbivores to venture into these new territories, seeking out the fresh vegetation. And where the reindeer went, human hunters were sure to follow. They were the pioneers of the north. The first people to enter Scandinavia were explorers in the truest sense. They traveled in small, mobile groups, carrying everything they owned with them. Their journey took them along the newly exposed coastline of what is now Norway. The sea offered a reliable source of food. They hunted seals and fished in the rich coastal waters, while also pursuing reindeer on the inland plains. These were the descendants of the great European hunter-gatherer populations, pushing the boundaries of the known world. They were tough, adaptable, and possessed an incredible knowledge of survival in harsh, unforgiving environments. Their settlements were often temporary, located at strategic points along the coast or near animal migration routes. They built simple shelters, perhaps skin tents or huts made from wood and turf, designed to be erected and dismantled quickly. We find their campsites today, marked by scatters of stone tools and the remains of their meals. These sites tell a story of a life lived on the move, a life dictated by the seasons and the constant search for food. They lived lightly on the land, but their presence marked the beginning of a human story in Scandinavia that continues to this day. Over thousands of years, these pioneering groups spread throughout the entire Scandinavian peninsula. As the climate continued to warm, the landscape changed. Dense pine and deciduous forests grew, and the reindeer moved further north, replaced by forest-dwelling animals like elk and deer. The people adapted their hunting strategies and their toolkits accordingly. They developed sophisticated fishing techniques, using nets, weirs, and bone hooks. They built dugout canoes to navigate the complex network of lakes, rivers, and coastal archipelagos. They had not just survived in this new land, they had mastered it. The end of the Ice Age brought about a profound change in the human diet. The days of hunting colossal mammoths on vast, open steppes were over. As forests spread across Europe, the large herds of Ice Age giants were replaced by smaller, more solitary animals. Red deer, roe deer, and wild boar became the new primary targets for hunters. These animals were faster and more cunning than the lumbering giants of the past. Hunting them required new skills, new strategies, and new weapons. The lone hunter, or the small hunting party, skilled in tracking and stealth, became the norm. This shift required great ingenuity. Hunters developed lighter, more versatile tools. The bow and arrow became a crucial piece of technology during this period. It allowed a hunter to strike at an animal from a distance, quietly and effectively, which was essential in a dense forest environment where visibility was limited. They also developed a wide variety of arrowheads, each designed for a specific type of prey. Small, sharp flint points called microliths were a hallmark of this era. They were mounted onto wooden shafts to create arrows and spears, a modular technology that was both efficient and adaptable. But hunting was only part of the story. The people of the Mesolithic became masters of foraging. The new forests, rivers, and coastlines offered a veritable banquet if you knew where to look. They gathered a huge variety of plants, roots, berries, leafy greens, and especially nuts like hazelnuts, which were a rich source of calories and could be stored for the winter. Huge piles of discarded nutshells have been found at Mesolithic sites, evidence of great feasts and careful planning. This broad-spectrum diet was more reliable than relying solely on big game, and it supported a healthier, more stable population. The sea and rivers also became incredibly important larders. People who lived near the coast or along major rivers had access to an abundance of food. They caught salmon, trout, eel, and pike using sophisticated traps, nets, and hooks made from bone or antler. Along the coasts, they gathered shellfish, creating huge mounds of discarded shells known as shell middens, which have survived for thousands of years. These middens are treasure troves for archaeologists, providing a detailed record of their diet, the local environment, and the seasons in which they were occupied. This varied diet was, honestly, a key to their success. The Mesolithic era was a time of remarkable technological innovation, driven by the need to adapt to a changing world. The defining technology of this period was the microlith. These were small, precisely shaped blades of flint, often no bigger than a fingernail. Unlike the large, heavy hand axes of earlier periods, microliths were components. They were designed to be fitted into slots in bone, antler, or wooden handles to create composite tools. This was a revolutionary concept. A hunter could carry a small pouch of these tiny blades and repair or create new tools on the go. This modular approach allowed for an incredible variety of tools to be made from a few basic shapes. Microliths could be set in a line along a piece of wood to create a sharp serrated knife or a sickle for cutting reeds and grasses. They could be fixed to the end of a shaft to make a deadly barbed arrowhead or a harpoon for hunting marine mammals. This technology was efficient, versatile, and lightweight, perfectly suited to the mobile lifestyle of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. It represents a significant cognitive leap, a new way of thinking about how to make and use tools. Beyond stone, our ancestors made masterful use of organic materials. Wood, bone, antler, and plant fibers were essential for their survival. They carved intricate harpoon heads with barbs from antler, ensuring that their prey could not escape. They fashioned fish hooks from bone and needles for sewing clothes from animal hides. From wood, they created the handles for their tools, the shafts for their arrows, and crucially, boats. Dugout canoes, hollowed out from large tree trunks using stone adzes and fire, allowed them to travel long distances on water, to fish in deep lakes, and to reach offshore islands. Perhaps one of the most significant early developments, appearing at the very end of this period, was pottery. In some regions, people began to experiment with firing clay to create durable, waterproof containers. This was a game changer. Pots allowed them to cook food in new ways, such as making stews and porridges, which unlocked more nutrients from their food. It also meant they could store food and water more effectively, a crucial step towards a more settled way of life. The first simple, undecorated pots were a humble beginning, but they heralded the dawn of a new era and the first steps towards the Neolithic Revolution. The creative spirit of our Mesolithic ancestors did not die with the great cave painters of the Ice Age. Instead, it transformed, adapting to their new world and new ways of life. While the massive, colorful cave murals became less common, art continued to be a vital part of their culture. It became smaller, more personal and portable. They engraved intricate designs and figures onto the tools they used every day, such as antler harpoons, bone daggers, and even small stone pendants. These objects were not just functional, they were imbued with meaning, story, and perhaps spiritual power. The subjects of their art shifted as well. While animals remained a central theme, the focus moved from the great mammoths and bison of the past to the deer, fish, and birds of their new environment. The style also changed. In many places, the art became more schematic and abstract. A series of lines and geometric patterns might represent a group of people, a river, or a spiritual concept. In the rock art of Iberia, for example, we see dynamic scenes of hunting and gathering. Stick-like human figures are shown running, firing bows, and collecting honey, providing a vivid glimpse into their daily activities. One of the most fascinating forms of Mesolithic art is found on small painted pebbles. At a site in France called Mas d'Azil, hundreds of these pebbles were discovered, decorated with bold, abstract symbols in red ochre. We see dots, stripes, crosses, and other geometric shapes. The meaning of these symbols is lost to us, but they were clearly important to the people who made them. Were they a form of communication, a counting system? Or did they have a ritual or magical significance? They remain a beautiful and profound mystery, a silent language from a lost world. This art tells us that our ancestors had a rich inner world. They were not just concerned with the practicalities of survival. They sought to understand their place in the cosmos, to tell stories, and to decorate their world with beauty and meaning. The engraved antler with a line of swimming deer was more than just a tool. It was a connection to the spirit of the animal. The painted pebble was more than just a stone. It was an object of belief. Through this portable and personal art, the people of the Mesolithic carried their culture with them, weaving a tapestry of meaning into the very fabric of their lives. If we were to travel back 12,000 years and meet the people of Mesolithic Europe, we might be surprised by their appearance. Genetic studies of ancient remains from this period have revealed a fascinating picture. These hunter-gatherers, the ancestors of many modern Europeans, looked quite different from the people who live in Europe today. The most striking difference would have been their combination of dark skin, ranging from dark brown to black, and striking blue or green eyes. This combination is very rare today, but appears to have been the common genetic template for Western hunter-gatherers of this era. This discovery, made possible by incredible advances in the analysis of ancient DNA, has reshaped our understanding of European ancestry. The light skin that is now common across Europe is a relatively recent development. It is believed to have become widespread with the arrival of the first farmers from the Near East who carried different genetic traits. The hunter-gatherers, our ancestors, were perfectly adapted to a life spent largely outdoors, and their darker skin would have provided protection from the sun's ultraviolet rays. Their blue eyes, however, are a trait that emerged in Europe many thousands of years earlier. These people were physically robust and strong. Their skeletons show that they lived physically demanding lives. They were generally shorter than modern humans, with powerful muscles developed from a lifetime of walking, running, and hunting. Their faces would have been shaped by a tough diet that required a lot of chewing, resulting in stronger jaws and teeth. Despite the hardships, those who survived into adulthood were often healthy and well-nourished, thanks to their varied and nutrient-rich diet of meat, fish and plants. They were a people forged by the challenges of their environment. The appearance of these ancient people is a powerful reminder that our modern notions of race and ethnicity are recent social constructs. Human populations have always been on the move, mixing and changing over time. The story of our Mesolithic ancestors shows us that the history of our species is one of constant adaptation and genetic flow. The people who roamed the forests and coastlines of post-Ice Age Europe were a unique and successful population, and their genetic legacy, though mixed with that of later arrivals, still runs through the veins of many Europeans today, a hidden echo of a distant past. The Mesolithic period was far more than just a transitional phase between the Ice Age and the Age of Agriculture. It was a time of profound creativity and adaptation that laid the essential groundwork for the rise of civilization. The people of this era were the great pioneers. They explored and settled new lands, from the northernmost coasts of Scandinavia to the disappearing shores of Doggerland. They developed a deep and intimate knowledge of their local environments, a wisdom that allowed them to thrive in a world that was constantly changing around them. The innovations of the Mesolithic were fundamental to our human story. The development of the bow and arrow revolutionized hunting. The creation of composite tools from microliths demonstrated a new level of cognitive and technical skill. The invention of boats opened up new worlds for travel and sustenance, and towards the end of this period, the first experiments with pottery and a more settled lifestyle began to emerge. These were not just clever inventions. They were solutions to real-world problems that allowed human populations to grow and become more complex. This was also the era in which we truly learned to live in a world of plenty. By diversifying their diet to include a wide array of plants, fish, birds, and smaller mammals, Mesolithic people created a more stable and resilient way of life. This broad-spectrum economy reduced the risk of starvation if one food source failed. It also allowed for the first small surpluses, the ability to store food for lean times. This economic security, however modest, was a crucial prerequisite for the development of larger communities, social hierarchies, and eventually the agricultural revolution itself. Therefore, when we look back at this fascinating time, we see the roots of our modern world. The resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability of our Mesolithic ancestors are a testament to the human spirit. They survived the end of one world and laid the foundations for the next. They were the first foresters, the first coastal navigators, the first to truly master the diverse ecosystems of our planet after the Great Cold. Their journey through a warming world was a critical chapter in our own story, and their legacy is all around us, in the landscapes they shaped and the genetic heritage they passed down through countless generations.